The Walk of Fame on Hollywood Boulevard, a street that really could do with spending a bit more on cosmetic surgery. But Hollywood Boulevard is richly studded with proper, recognisable, old-time Hollywood landmarks. Buildings like Grauman's Chinese Theatre, for example, we just don't remember them looking quite this dirty. And that gap between the glossy myth and the sometimes grim reality of Hollywood is the very stuff of the secret map. There once was a golden era when this area was as glamorous as Hollywood got. Movie stars were a common sight in the restaurants and clubs, and the Academy Awards were held at the Pantages Theatre throughout the 50s. But when real estate became too expensive, major studios like Warner's and 20th Century Fox upped and left, and with them went the stars. Since then, this legendary street has struggled gamely to hold on to its fame. On Hollywood Boulevard, the fact that show business is a nasty business is nakedly revealed. There's a war going on between the stars and the press. Fame is a brittle thing, and you don't want some hack to take it away from you, but they can, and they do. So here on the Walk of Fame, there are names that we recognise and plenty more that we don't. Rusty Hamer, you remember Rusty, don't you? Me neither. This, then, is the secret map of Hollywood Boulevard. Studied around its 4-mile stretch, there are notorious sites that have seen the good.
Any girl that you want to be, you can be that girl.
The bad.
Anthony Pellicano is the thug to the stars, the PI to the stars.
Oh, how's the family? Click.
And the ugly side of Hollywood.
Don Simpson and his lifestyle were repellent. He was an awful, awful guy.
And where there's the possibility of celebrity scandal, there's an ongoing battle between those trying to keep their secrets and those trying to feed the insatiable appetite for gossip. The war between stars and their studios and agents and the tabloid press has been going on for at least 50 years. And one of the biggest pitched battles in that war began behind me at Grauman's Chinese Theatre way back in November of 1953. One afternoon, Maureen O'Hara dropped by for a matinee. She had company, an attractive male friend. But it's impossible for a star as famous as O'Hara to keep a secret simply by sitting in the darker stalls. People saw them together and speculated. And where there was speculation, there was Confidential magazine, Hollywood's premier scandal sheet.
This magazine, Confidential, printed a shocking article about me.
Wherever there was a whiff of scandal, Confidential would be there. O'Hara, of whom more later, was only one in a long line of stars who had been a subject of the magazine's leering articles. Its combination of outrageous headlines and sensational photographs made it the top-selling periodical of its day.
Hollywood was scared to death of Confidential magazine.
This was sleazy. I mean, there was stuff coming out in there that was so bad.
They wrote about subjects that no one ever dared to speak about: homosexuality, drugs, alcoholism, menage a trois. It was just too exciting for words.
Confidential also managed to shatter the wholesome star images that the studio PR men so carefully constructed.
Movie studios were very upset about it because they were spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars creating images for their stars, and they were not happy when some of their stars were portrayed in less than a particularly favorable light.
Universal had found out Confidential was going to run a story that Rock Hudson was gay. At that time, Rock Hudson was the big macho star of Universal. And the studio traded another story. I sold out Rory Calhoun, who was a Western star. Rory had spent some time in a reformatory when he was a kid. So the studio gave him that story if Confidential would not print the Rock Hudson story, which they didn't.
The reason the stars and the studios rarely sued was because in court and under oath, they were scared stiff that the really juicy stuff would be made public.
You are suing them because you're saying that they're wrong about a sexual matter. This opens the door for them to ask you any question about sex. So Robert Harrison, the publisher of the Confidential magazine, knew that.
Lawsuits give us an opportunity, give Confidential an opportunity to prove the truth of the stories that we publish.
The stars may not have wanted to sue, but Attorney General Edmund Brown had no such problems. And in 1957, he brought a case of criminal libel against Confidential. The date was set and the jury assembled for one of the most sensational trials Hollywood had seen. And the defense took the unusual decision to subpoena practically every star in town.
I sent my investigators out, and we were subpoenaing everybody. All these movie stars seem to be leaving town very rapidly.
They went south. They had a vacation time.
But one man who was only too happy to take the stand was flamboyant pianist Liberace, annoyed with the magazine after it claimed he had made goo-goo eyes at a handsome young buck.
I am fighting not only for my reputation, but for the reputation of every entertainer and good American in our country.
Ooh, listen to him. After Liberace came battling Maureen O'Hara, gloves off and ready to set the record straight about that visit to the cinema.
I am no lady when I fight.
Maureen O'Hara was supposed to have been at Grauman's Chinese Theater with some guy very close to, if not having sex, in the 35th row. And there was like a blow-by-blow description of what she and this man were up to.
She had that fiery Irish temper. And boy, when they said that about her, she really fought back.
This article was completely erroneous and doesn't have one single basis of fact whatsoever in it.
Maureen O'Hara countered by showing her passport that she was out of the country on the day they said this had happened.
Just to make sure, the prosecution decided to load the jury onto a bus and drive them down to Grauman's on Hollywood Boulevard to see whether or not Maureen could have performed those dirty deeds in such a confined space. After 2 weeks of arguing, a hung jury was declared to the delight of the confidential camp. But when the judge ruled a retrial, neither the magazine nor the state of California had the stomach for any more, and a deal was struck.
What happened was everything was sort of withdrawn, and they made a pledge not to do any more scurrilous stories about stars. Well, of course, Confidential magazine without scurrilous stories about stars was the most boring publication on earth, and closed up shop very shortly afterwards.
The magazine was a goner, but the damage had been done, and increasingly stars stayed clear of Hollywood Boulevard and holed up in their expensive mansions. And nowadays they've got even more publicists, agents, minders and personal assistants whose job it is to keep their bad behaviour away from the prying eyes of a voracious Hollywood press pack. So you're a journalist and you live and work here in Hollywood. Where are your values? What's your style? Do you faithfully reprint the official press release? Do you respectfully ask stars questions about the film and only the film? Do you stay on the right side of the red rope at the premiere? Or are your sights set a little lower, roughly on a level with the groin? We decided to ask Sam Rubin, well-respected showbiz reporter at nearby KTLA. And this, ladies and gentlemen, may well be the finest journalism Hollywood has to offer.
We will never allow personal publicists to dictate to us the questions we ask stars or the information we bring you.
Rubin takes his responsibility to bring good gossip to the viewers very seriously. The morning news show on KTLA loves star stories, and Sam's always there, pressing the celebrity flesh.
Let's be honest.
Okay, let's be honest.
The one who is consistently the nicest and quote-unquote delivers is Tom Hanks, who really, I think, has a genuine understanding and appreciation of what we have to do.
You might be experiencing a little bit of Sam Rubin backlash that I don't want to fall into that trap, my friend.
But not every star has fallen for Rubin's charms.
George Clooney won't talk to me, apparently. And I don't know why. His publicist doesn't know why, but apparently I said something that set him off. Particularly for a fellow like George Clooney, who's this proponent of free speech, and his father was a television newsman for years. How dare you decide who you talk to and not talk to? The president doesn't pick and choose the people he talks to.
But even smooth operator Rubin can ruffle a few feathers.
Michelle Pfeiffer made a movie with Harrison Ford called What Lies Beneath. The review came out and said that there was too large an age disparity, that Harrison Ford would never get a woman like Michelle Pfeiffer.
What it in effect says is, this movie has merit, blah, 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 but I'll just tell you what it says. But are these actors, out of the demographic? Effectively, are these actors too old?
She was very put off by that. And then I was told by her publicist that she didn't want to speak to me again.
That's it. You will never interview Michelle Pfeiffer again. Ooh, ouch. Ow. Ooh, yikes.
But there's one thing that LA viewers love more than sulky celebs, and that's car crashes.
Well, good morning, everybody. We got a lot working. There's still somebody trapped in there. Can you believe that?
Looks like you see the person sitting there. You see your face. His or her face.
Look at that. Look at that woman.
This particular morning, the script is thrown in the bin as KTLA goes live for 30 minutes of someone being cut out of a car wreck, which viewers can enjoy from the comfort of their own home.
Typical Southern California situation. There's now a horrible traffic accident. Obviously, that's more urgent and immediate than, what happened to Jennifer Lopez yesterday.
Phew, thanks, Sam. For a minute there, I thought we were living in a society that worships celebrity at the expense of the common man. And speaking of worship, standing eerily in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard is the world headquarters for the International Church of Scientology, which has also acquired considerable amounts of property elsewhere on the boulevard. Based on the self-help teachings of its late founder, science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard, who set up the church in 1954, Scientology is where pseudo-religion meets showbiz. From the very beginning, the church targeted celebrities to help spread the word. It now counts Tom Cruise, Kirstie Alley, Juliette Lewis and John Travolta among its members.
From the 22 years that I've been involved, I can only observe the good that's been done. I use it as much as I can on everyone I know.
Like its star believers, the church is notoriously litigious and often threatens to sue the pants off anyone who says anything derisory about them. And personally, I think they're brilliant. The fusion of star converts and Scientology came to its logical conclusion in the year 2000, when John Travolta produced and starred in Battlefield Earth, a film based on one of L. Ron Hubbard's texts. The world held its breath. Could this be the beginnings of a mass conversion to Scientology? No. The film was crap and it died on its arse. And speaking of arse, this risque row of shops on Hollywood Boulevard sells something every star needs, with the possible exception of Sharon Stone. Underwear. No self-respecting leading lady wears something cheap down the red carpet unless she wants to, in which case she probably shopped for it down here, in LA's lingerie district. These days, the classy outlets have all moved uptown, but if you, me, or a star who's slumming it wants to go shopping, this is the place to come. Now, of course, most Hollywood wannabes have at least a passing acquaintance with undergarments, but some have a greater interest than others. For example, Dieter Von Teese, the fiancée of shock rocker Marilyn Manson. Ms. Von Teese is almost single-handedly responsible for the revival in the art of burlesque striptease, so consequently she knows her way around a pair of scanty panties far better than I ever will. I'll hand you over to her. Now, please go away. I have some shopping to do. I'm thinking about switching to thongs.
I have been interested in lingerie my entire life. When I was a little girl, I watched all the old movies and I was really intrigued by the girls, dressing and undressing and hooking their garters and things, and I decided I was going to wear beautiful lingerie like the women in the movies.
Dieter's favourite place to buy her pants is the nearby Trashy Lingerie, an exclusive members-only shop that can provide celebrities with that extra special pair of Allen Wickers.
Any girl that you want to be, you can be that girl. Bras made in every fabric and every style. The shortest schoolgirl skirt in the entire world. It's very sweet, but, it's cut out. It's pretty raunchy, pretty dirty.
Apart from the internet, the shop is one of the few places in the world where you might just get a peek at stars in their sexiest pants.
The kinds of celebrities that shop at Trashy are, well, pretty much anybody that you can think of. And I mean thousands of people. Just to name a few, Britney Spears, Jerry Halliwell, Madonna, Cher, Courtney Love, Robbie Coltrane.
Robbie Coltrane? It's not known whether Robbie tried on the Snow White outfit or squeezed himself into the military look, but there have been confirmed sightings of A-list celebs getting carried away by the giddy excitement of it all.
Drew Barrymore and Winona Ryder came in, and they were both interested in our most famous panty. It's called the Carter panty. I'm going to show you what that is. It's a very conservative yet fun, kind of hip with a full butt coverage, and it was kind of a running joke. Well, who had more panties? And this went on for months, and they kept coming in and buying more. Well, how many did she buy? How many did she buy? And I think it ends up Drew had almost 1,000 pairs, so she won. But sadly, a few years ago, her house burned to the ground, so she lost everything.
Oh well, Drew, even before the great Hollywood panty fire, you were never going to have a bigger knicker collection than Winona, because as we all know, when Winona goes shopping, she usually leaves with a little bit more than everyone else. Probably the most famous building around Hollywood Boulevard is the Capitol Records building, designed to look like a stack of records, or vinyl, as the young people like to call it. Capitol Records was home to many classic crooners, but the strangest Hollywood story surrounds Nat King Cole and the recording of one of his greatest hits, Nature Boy.
There was a boy, a very strange enchanted boy.
The song was written by Eden Arbez, who lived out the Nature Boy philosophy, choosing to sleep outdoors in the Hollywood Hills and eat nuts and berries. In 1947, he wrote his song down and wandered into LA to find the perfect voice to sing it.
He wanted Nat Cole to do this song. Nat was appearing, I think, at the Orpheum downtown LA. So he went down to the Orpheum and he came up to the doorman. He was kind of like a young JC, you know, I mean, and he had the long beard and the hair. So when this apparition came up to the doorman, he said, I want to see Nat Cole. He said, forget, you know, he wasn't going to get in. About the third time he came down there, he gave him the score to the song. He said, would you give this to Nat Cole? Apparently Nat looked at it and he said, boy, I got to do this, which they did. That was Nat's big break.
Nature Boy went on to spend 8 weeks at #1 in the US charts, but success didn't alter Eden's lifestyle.
They were trying to find Eden to do some publicity and give him some royalty checks, and they couldn't find him anywhere. They had the word out, everybody around Hollywood. I don't know what he did. He was living under the H of the Hollywoodland sign up on the hill in the back of Hollywood there at that time.
They say he wandered very far, very far.
Nature Boy, meet Nat Cole.
Arbez finally met Nat King Cole in 1948, courtesy of an early radio and television show.
All the money in the world will not change my way of life, because all the money in the world could not give me the things I already have. Anna and I have learned that nature and a simple life will bring you peace and happiness. We sleep on the ground in sleeping bags in the California mountains and deserts.
Well, where are you staying?
Arbez lived out an austere, environmentally friendly existence until his death in 1995, when, in a cruel twist, he was hit by a car.
He was into love. That was the basis of everything that he wrote and everything that he did.
The greatest thing you ever learn is just to love and be loved in return.
Hollywood doesn't really have a past. What Hollywood has is a back catalogue, old stock that still sells, even if the prices aren't that high. And this area, where many of the Hollywood studios once were, is exactly where you'd expect to find the silent movie theatre, a home for old movies where the old movies were made. That's a comforting and comfortable thought, isn't it? But of course, life doesn't normally turn out like the old movies did. The Silent Movie Theatre is one of the few cinemas in the world dedicated to showing only silent movies. And it was here in 1997 that one of Hollywood's bloodiest and most calculated murders took place. Although at first sight, it's a genteel, nostalgic place that reeks of old Hollywood.
Take me to the silent picture show. I've been waiting all this time to go. Whoa. I've been walking down the aisles, watching all those smiles, smiling at the silent picture show.
The victim of the murder was a flamboyant and well-known local character, the owner of the Silent Movie Theatre, Lawrence Austin.
He had sort of this infectious love of silence, and when I first started coming here, I think that was, more than anything, sold me on the film. I mean, it was sincere. Always meticulously dressed in a suit and tie, his golden comb-over. I mean, he would whip it up into this amazing dollop on his head. It was definitely weird, but everyone loved him.
Austin was also a closet homosexual, and in the early 90s he met and fell for one James Van Sickle. Austin lavished money and expensive gifts on his new lover, then gave him a job as a projectionist. He didn't even check into Van Sickle's references, a decision that would cost Austin his life.
Van Sickle had been involved in the rough trade here in the United States of America. Rough trade is where young male homosexual hustlers travel around the country accompanying older males, moving in with them, taking control of certain aspects of their lives and then crescendoing these relationships with a violent type outburst.
James Van Sickle was a hustler, and the now besotted Austin seemed to be the only one who didn't realise how dangerous he was.
I didn't like James right away. You know, he referred to his wilder days and referred to acts that he'd committed, you know, assaulting someone with a hammer and, you know, all this, you know, stuff like in conversation, like it's just a funny old story. So I was a little afraid of him.
Van Sickle was scheming. He knew the theatre's movie archive was worth over $1 million and figured that if his elderly lover was killed, he stood to inherit everything. Poor Austin didn't stand a chance. January the 17th, 1997 seemed to be like any other evening as Austin proudly walked down the aisle to introduce his beloved silent movies. On organ duty that night was Dean Moore. In the projection booth was Van Sickle. And Austin took to the stage in front of an appreciative audience.
This is a shrine to silent films. Thank you.
But it was to be his farewell performance. Sitting in the back row, nursing a .357 Magnum in his pocket, was a hitman.
So I'm sitting, watching this. I become aware someone has come and sat right here. I turned and looked, and my first thought was, uh-oh. I had come to the silent movie theater long enough to know the type of clientele, and this kid did not fit in. There was nothing at all suspicious in his actions, but he was out of place.
That out-of-place kid was Christian Rodriguez, a would-be hitman who'd never actually committed a crime in his life. James Van Sickle had promised him $25,000 if he killed Lawrence Austin and made it look like a robbery. And Van Sickle callously suggested to Rodriguez that he should shoot the box off his girl as well in order to make it look more convincing. Rodriguez sat through the first silent, waiting for his moment.
Real change, time to go on to another, which is School Days with Larry Seaman. Soon as that happens, he gets immediately up, gone, right through the black curtains. Oh, I took my purse immediately, moved it over here. Well, thank God, he's gone.
The movie School Days starts, and I'm just playing some of the, the goofy music that's going along for the show.
And then I hear behind me, bam, like that.
I hear the shots, which I thought were firecrackers.
And then there was a pause, and then another bam, and then bam, bam. I'm going, what the heck is going on out there?
I knew that something was wrong. I saw this kind of shadowy figure came down here, and about here he started shooting all over the place.
It was surreal. I did not for 1 minute think this was real. It looked theatrical, it looked staged, and who would go in the lobby, commit a crime, and come running back through the theater, and then the organist comes running up here? It was unbelievable.
But it was no melodrama. Austin lay dead in the lobby, having been shot through the eye. The ice cream girl, too, had been shot at point-blank range, but amazingly, she survived. When the police arrived, the killer had escaped from the theatre, but they suspected it wasn't a straightforward robbery.
Things just didn't seem quite right. We didn't quite understand why the money wasn't taken. Actually, the money was still on the ground. He goes out the back. He would have had to have had information. One, that door was open, which was our first clue that maybe it was somebody who was either inside or who had some knowledge of how the theater worked.
Meanwhile, Van Sickle had come down from the projection booth and was telling anyone who'd listen how upset he was.
He didn't really have the typical reaction that you would have to this kind of event. He didn't really come out with a lot of information that would be helpful to the case itself, but he did come out with a lot of self-serving information.
He started explaining to us where he was when the murder occurred, which was kind of a clue to us because we didn't ask him for it. But he just said he was up in the projection booth.
In true Hollywood style, the detectives had a hunch that James Van Sickle was involved in the killing, but they couldn't link him to the hitman. They got their break when the injured young woman from the lobby gave her eyewitness account to the TV show America's Most Wanted.
I just want to catch this guy. I want to bring him to justice.
The victim and I spent over 5 hours working on the sketch. Her observations provided us with an excellent description.
Yeah. Wow, that's really good.
A young kid spotted the photo fit, and he thought it looked like his friend, Christian Rodriguez, and the gunman's stupidity did the rest.
Rodriguez said something to the effect, the cops will never catch me because I'm too smart. Well, this kid, he went home and told his mother, and his mother happened to be a friend of a deputy sheriff. So she told the deputy sheriff gets the kid, brings him into the station, and he identifies Rodriguez.
A repentant and frightened Rodriguez confessed to the shootings almost immediately and told the police what they already suspected, that Van Sickle had set the whole thing up. But it was Van Sickle's premeditated evil that upset them the most.
He's giving this guy a bonus to kill a completely innocent girl with her life ahead of her. I mean, come on. I think that more than anything is going to put him on an express train to hell.
Sadly, your chances of bumping into Brad or Nicole when strolling along Hollywood Boulevard are virtually zero. Only on Oscar night at the glorified shopping mall that is the Hollywood and Highland complex might you catch a quick glimpse of them. Tourists come here in search of glamour, and glamour makes itself scarce. But then the last person who would give you detailed insight into the Hollywood high life is a celebrity. They don't want civilians to know about their tantrums, their drug addictions or their sexual indiscretions. Fortunately, there's a genre of literature that scares the celebs and gives the fans exactly what they want, the unauthorized biography.
And everybody tends to like a little bit of gossip.
We don't have anybody in America to be obsessed about, so we obsess about screen stars and the people behind them.
Hey, Mary, did you hear what I heard about?
My mother used to say, if you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything at all. It's hard to do when you're a biographer.
The biography industry is worth many millions of dollars a year, with new titles appearing weekly. But what are the key ingredients that make a great Hollywood biography?
Money, scandal, sex, suicide, death, prescription drugs, narcotics, whatever it is that will add that extra layer of scandal that will make people all over the world think it's just as bad as we thought. Hollywood really is an evil place.
People do like to have fantasies, and they like to live in other people's worlds.
But in order to live with the idea that they are very glamorous and we are not, I think we also have to believe that there's something flawed and injured about them. That way, at least, we don't break our hearts admiring what they have and knowing that we can't have it.
I certainly do intend to invade their privacy. I mean, if I don't invade their privacy, then I'm really not doing my job, But there is a way to do that with, a certain amount of affection and respect.
J. Randy Taraborelli is king amongst Hollywood biographers. He cherry-picks the most notorious figures and reveals their secret lives, and his books sell in their millions.
The people I write about are historical figures. Like it or not, trash it if you will. The fact of the matter is that these people are historical pop icons, and we tend to look at celebrities as caricatures. My job as a biographer is to show you that that person is a real person.
And when Mr. Taraborelli writes about Diana Ross, Frank Sinatra, Michael Jackson or whoever else, he doesn't just put in every rumour he hears. A team of 5 researchers help him verify his books, and he can afford to reject some juicy but uncheckable rumours.
I've had quite a few stories over the years that I've really wanted to write about that I just really couldn't verify. And most of those stories had to do with Madonna's sex life. All the guys Madonna ever had sex with want to make sure that you know that she had sex with them, and the women too. So people were coming out of the woodwork with Madonna's sex stories when I was writing that book. It seemed like everybody in Los Angeles had sex with this woman at one point or another. I don't know if it was true or not.
There's a certain satisfaction in a little bit of pain.
I could only really use the sources that I actually really believed.
With all this muckraking, you'd think celebrities would despise a biographer. But as always, the politics of fame are much more complicated than that.
Most celebrities are thrilled if somebody wants to write an unauthorized biography about them or wants to write a real biography about them, because that means that they're popular.
It's happened that a celebrity has actually cooperated with my work by allowing friends and family members to talk to me. When I wrote my first book about Michael, there was definitely a message he wanted to impart, having to do with his dysfunctional childhood. He wanted that message out there, but he didn't want to deliver it himself.
Not all Hollywood biographies are star biographies. There's a huge market for Hollywood insider books that reveal the less than glamorous underbelly. The most famous expose of bad behavior in the film studios is the story of Hollywood producer Don Simpson.
It's impossible to find a better poster boy for Hollywood excess during the 80s, 90s than Don Simpson. He's really larger than life in every sense of the word. He did more, he ruined more, he spent more, he had more sex, he took more drugs, he drank more alcohol, and he made bigger movies that made more money than anybody else of his class.
I do like altered states of consciousness, but I like remaining me at the same time.
Simpson co-produced all-American no-brainer barnstormers like Top Gun, Flashdance and Beverly Hills Cop. The films were hugely successful, and Simpson would boast to journalists about his hedonistic lifestyle. So that made the biographer's job a little easier.
Don Simpson was very clever in the way that he told stories about himself. He would say, on the record, look, sex and drugs and rock and roll, I love it all, and I do it all. And I've done it all, and I'm not ashamed of anything.
I've always been able to kind of teeter on the precipice.
If he let people know, let reporters know, that he was interested in hookers, they might be scandalized by that, but they certainly wouldn't think he was lying about it.
You know, like when you meet a lady and she says, well, would you like to make love? Well, the first thing I'd like to do is fuck, not make love.
What's really going on is far more extreme than that. What's being done to those girls ends up hospitalizing one of them.
Simpson's notoriety hid a more tragic addiction to sex and drugs, and he died from a lethal cocktail of over 30 substances in 1996. But no matter who the subject is, a biography takes years to research, and that means years trying to get inside someone else's head.
I did become a little bit obsessed with the subject. I mean, I had dreams of Madonna coming to my house and trying to set the record straight about certain matters, or Michael Jackson sitting me down in his oxygen chamber to explain, you know, just exactly why he wanted those Elephant Man's bones.
Don Simpson and his lifestyle were repellent. And over the course of reporting his story, I began to feel incredibly depressed and incredibly down and soiled and injured and wounded just by the proximity to the level of disease that infected him.
The biographer whisks the reader into the celebrity's glossy world, pulls the skeletons out of their cupboard and brings us into their bed. And we readers enjoy the vicarious thrill of it all. So whose knicker drawer are they planning to rummage through next?
I have a feeling that one day I may want to write about Nicole Kidman. I think that she's got a lot of Jackie Kennedy in her. Her marriage to Tom Cruise was very similar in many respects to Jackie's marriage to JFK, just in the fact that both Jackie and Nicole put up with a lot of crap and managed to come out of it with a lot of dignity and never really said anything about any of it.
For me, Hollywood is a great story because it involves all of the things that make for great drama. There's a lot of big money, there's a lot of big personalities, there's a lot of big drama. Just careers and lives crashing together, falling apart, going down in flames. That's just an exciting thing to be a spectator to. So I'm waiting for the next Don Simpson to come along.
Sometime in 1988, when he was working here at Paramount Studios, Don Simpson heard some unwelcome news. A former secretary had filed suit against him, accusing Simpson of numerous sorts of abusive behaviour. Well, not to worry. Hollywood has people who can help you with that kind of thing, and Simpson promptly called one of them, a Mr. Anthony Pellicano, a private investigator of sorts, but really he's more like a human stain remover. He can make the bad news go away, using a range of techniques reputed to include wiretapping, baseball bats, guns and plastic explosives. Nice work, fella.
Anthony Pellicano is the thug to the stars, the PI to the stars.
He was the master of making you think that horrible things were going to happen to you.
He's got the most interesting office in Hollywood, one that anyone would love to stick their nose into because he's got files on everybody.
Oh, I hear you were talking to the DA the other day. Oh, how's the family? Click.
In the 1970s, Anthony Pellicano was a long way from being the celebrity's thug of choice. He was, in fact, just another private detective in Chicago. He needed to make an impact, and in 1977, he helped solve a mysterious celebrity grave robbery.
The remains of Mike Todd, who was Elizabeth Taylor's third husband, I think, were stolen from the cemetery in Chicago. And it was a pretty big case. Elizabeth Taylor flew into town. And then, lo and behold, Anthony Pellicano finds them magically. There's been great speculation that he really took them out himself and that he made this happen.
The combination of acclaim, publicity and celebrity endorsement proved irresistible. So in 1980, Pellicano headed for the Hollywood sunshine. He helped discredit prosecution evidence in the trial of car magnate John DeLorean and soon made a name for himself as the hard man who the rich and shameless could call on if they got into trouble.
Hollywood is primarily made up of little children who run around pretending they're big people, but then they have lots more money than they should have. Most of them are somewhat disturbed people. They're always afraid of losing their job, losing their money. And here's a guy who comes across as really tough and has that mob thing going on. And don't worry, baby, I can take care of you, and I'll take care of this. And to a large extent, he could. I mean, he was successful, no doubt about that.
You woke up this morning, got yourself a gun.
A major star was getting threatening letters, and nobody could find out where these threatening letters were coming from. And Anthony somehow discovered the sender in some small town in upstate New York. That's the kind of thing he would do, and in some cases do splendidly.
And people liked kind of rubbing shoulders with somebody who was supposedly a gangster, or at least connected to gangsters, and he would foster that image.
Pelicano was fast becoming a celebrity in his own right. And it seemed no high-profile Hollywood trial was complete without an appearance from the Pelican. Where there were celebrities, money and scandal, there was Pelicano.
I believe that Michael Jackson is innocent.
Pelicano was paid almost $2 million for that, for his work for Michael Jackson. Now, it's hard to imagine what he might have done to receive that type of, shall we say, very generous fee. I've been told that he helped clean out evidence that was in the house in Neverland and made it disappear.
The stars trusted Pelicano to do their dirty work, but the victims of his harassment started to fight back.
This reporter for the Los Angeles Times, a woman, was writing stories about Steven Seagal, which I guess Mr. Pelicano did not like. And the reporter goes to her car and she finds like a dead fish and the word stop and all, again, this cornball, television show mafia stuff.
The LA Times reporter wasn't intimidated by a dead halibut, and she reported the incident to the police, who thought the matter serious enough to issue a search warrant for Pelicano's office.
They located $200,000 in cash, jewelry, and C4 explosive, which is very, very dangerous, and 2 live hand grenades.
The sleuth to the stars received a sentence today of 2.5 years in federal prison.
The Hollywood stars weren't worried by the weapons, but the FBI found something that would terrify every celeb who'd ever had dealings with Pelicano.
Pelicano's been hired by some of the biggest stars, agents, and lawyers in town. Is said to have, well, maybe bent the rules in doing his work. Gary Shandling says the FBI has told him that Pelicano tapped his phone. Gary may not be the only one.
Your phone in your house would be answered by a computer in his office. You would never hear it, you'd never know about it.
Not only does he investigate the people they send him out to investigate, I think he keeps records on his clients, too.
If that's true, you don't know how far these dominoes will fall.
I think people who hired him live to regret it many times.
A lot of people in Hollywood are very concerned about what can happen here.
Anthony Pelicano is currently serving his sentence for possession of explosives. He's insisted he won't reveal any of his clients' secrets and will serve his time quietly. But investigations into his illegal phone tapping are ongoing, and it's widely believed that Pelicano will end up in jail for a long time. With his reputation in ruins and having eavesdropped on the most intimate telephone conversations in Hollywood, the temptation to sing like a canary might be just too great.
A very shifty guy with a ton of information. I think much of it is yet to be revealed. There are probably a lot of nervous people in Hollywood who've dealt with him, waiting for this information to come out.
Fame is the only real currency here in Hollywood. If you can get it and hold on to it, the money floods in. People like Anthony Pelicano understand that fact and sell their services to stars who've made mistakes. The Pelicanos of this world don't come cheap, but it's money well spent, because if someone's sitting on the nasty stories for you, then what's left for Sam Rubin to report? Just the nice, harmless stuff. The Walk of Fame is difficult to stay on. Some of these nameplates might just as well be headstones. Remember Rusty Hamer? Forgotten him already.
He's gonna end up on the dirty boulevard. He's going out to the dirty boulevard. He's going down to the dirty boulevard.
If you like celebs and fancy making some virtual cash, why not play the Celebrity Stock Exchange? Log on to bbc.co.uk/celebdac. Next tonight on BBC One, from committing crime to cracking it, Claire Danes stars in the late film The Mod Squad.